The sun hadn't fully risen over Crestwood Heights, but the neighborhood was already awake, buzzing with quiet judgment, twitching curtains, and the soft hum of HOA patrol carts rolling past perfect lawns. At the end of Redwood Lane stood Keanu Reeves' house, the only place on the street that looked lived in. Not messy, just normal, untouched by the obsessive uniformity that the HOA worshipped. And this morning, like every morning for the past 2 weeks, a delivery truck stopped in front of his gate. The driver unloaded box after box, long ones, heavy ones, odd-shaped ones sealed with reinforced tape. 12 deliveries in a single week. 23 in 2. The neighbors whispered. The HOA panicked. But Keanu simply thanked the driver, carried each box inside quietly, and closed the door behind him without a word. Behind those doors, however, was a secret. One he guarded fiercely, one he prayed no one would discover before he was ready. But secrets, especially good ones, have a way of attracting bad attention. And today, trouble arrived wrapped in a crisp polo shirt and an even sharper attitude. At precisely 8 a.m., HOA President Marjorie Cranston marched toward Keanu's porch like a general approaching a battlefield. Her clipboard was clutched to her chest, her lips pressed into a permanent scowl. She took pictures of the boxes stacked temporarily by the side door. Click, click, another angle, click. She wanted evidence, not to understand, not to help, but to control. Her eyes were cold as she scribbled violations in red pen. Excessive delivery waste, she muttered. Violation of clean property policy. Violation of visual harmony guidelines. Violation of, she paused, inventing a new rule on the spot. Obstruction of aesthetic uniformity. That one made her smile. Keanu opened the door before she could knock. Calm, polite, the way he always was. But even his kindness didn't soften Marjorie's glare. Mr. Reeves, she began sharply, we've received multiple complaints regarding all of this. Her hand waved dramatically at the harmless stacks of boxes like they were radioactive. Redwood Lane is not a warehouse district. This is a community of standards. Keanu nodded politely. I understand. I'm just working on something important. I'll move them inside soon. But those words only seemed to irritate her. Working on what, exactly? She demanded, leaning closer. You've had more deliveries this month than the entire neighborhood combined. Residents are concerned. The HOA board is concerned. Keanu's jaw tightened, not in anger, but in the tension of someone hiding pain. It's personal, he replied gently. I hope you can respect that. Marjorie's eyes narrowed. Respect wasn't in her vocabulary. She slapped a paper onto his door, a bright yellow fine form. This is your official notice. You have been fined $1,000 for violations of HOA Regulations 14B, 22C, 31D. She paused, then smiled. And 47F. There is no 47F, Keanu said softly. There is now, she replied, snapping her pen closed. For a moment, silence hung between them. The air felt heavy. Keanu didn't argue. He simply took the paper, thanked her quietly, and closed the door. And that small act, kindness in the face of cruelty, only fueled the HOA's suspicion. Inside the house, Keanu exhaled slowly. He wasn't angry, but he was disappointed. The boxes weren't junk. They weren't furniture. They weren't supplies for some luxury remodel. They held metal frames, pneumatic wheels, ergonomic parts, and lightweight alloys, shipped from all over the world. He had spent months designing something special, something meaningful, something for people who needed help and had no one else to rely on. But if the HOA interfered, if they kept escalating, they might discover everything before the children did. Back outside, Marjorie spoke into her walkie-talkie like she was reporting a crime. He's hiding something, she whispered. I want full surveillance on Redwood Lane. The HOA patrol cart crackled a response. Copy that. The war had officially begun, and Keanu had no idea how far they were willing to go. The HOA wasted no time turning Redwood Lane into their personal surveillance zone. By the next morning, a small fleet of HOA volunteers, retirees with binoculars, bored middle-aged residents with clipboards, and one overly enthusiastic man with a drone, positioned themselves like undercover agents around Keanu's property. They didn't hide their intentions. Whenever he stepped outside, phones angled toward him. Whenever a delivery truck arrived, neighbors snapped photos as if documenting criminal activity. And whenever he carried a box inside, whispers drifted across the street. What is he doing? Why so many? Is he starting a business? Suspicion grew like mold in the cracks of their perfect sidewalks. Keanu felt the pressure but stayed silent. He continued his routine, unpacking boxes, sorting metal parts, carefully organizing tools in the converted garage. Behind that garage door, sparks from welding illuminated the dark room like tiny stars. Measurements lay scattered on blueprints. Half-built frames rested on workbenches. And on the far wall hung photos, children in wheelchairs, children smiling beside him, children from hospitals he visited quietly without cameras or press. One photo showed a boy named Ethan, drawn in crayon by Ethan himself with shaky hands. "Thank you for helping me move fast again." That drawing alone reminded Keanu why he couldn't let the HOA slow him down. He was building more than just devices. He was building freedom. But the HOA didn't understand anything except rules. At an emergency meeting that night, Marjorie Cranston stood before a room full of restless homeowners. She projected photos of Keanu's boxes onto a screen like evidence at a trial. "This level of activity," she declared, tapping the screen with a pointer, "indicates unauthorized commercial operations. Possibly hazardous. Potentially illegal." Gasps filled the room, dramatic, exaggerated, exactly what she wanted. She continued, "As HOA president, I am launching a formal investigation. We will determine what Mr. Reeves is building, storing, or hiding inside his home. The integrity of Crestwood Heights depends on it." The room erupted in agreement, though half the residents had no idea what they were agreeing to. Meanwhile, across the street, 12-year-old Emily Caldwell watched the meeting through the clubhouse window. She didn't care about boxes. She cared about Keanu, the quiet man who once fixed her broken bike and told her she would grow strong legs if she kept riding. She knew he wasn't dangerous. She knew he wasn't doing anything wrong. But Emily also knew her mother, like many others, blindly followed the HOA. And tonight, she saw something that made her heart tighten. Marjorie distributing neighborhood observation sheets and assigning houses to monitor Keanu in rotating shifts. The investigation wasn't just official, it was personal, obsessive, and escalating fast. Later that night, as Keanu loaded another box into the garage, he noticed a red laser dot flicker across the driveway. Not a weapon, a drone camera. It hovered silently above the rooftops, watching him, recording him. He sighed, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and quietly closed the garage door. Outside, the drone zipped away. Inside, Keanu leaned against the wall, the weight of everything pressing down on him. The children were expecting the prototypes soon. The hospital was waiting. The charity event was approaching. He didn't have time for battles, fines, or neighborhood politics. But the HOA had drawn their line, and the tension in the air told him something dangerous. They weren't just watching anymore. They were planning something bigger. The night of the break-in began like any other, quiet, still, and deceptively peaceful. Crestwood Heights always slept early, its residents tucked behind identical doors with identical porch lights and identical worries about rules and appearances. But at 2:14 a.m., 3 HOA board members, Marjorie's most loyal enforcers, gathered at the corner of Redwood Lane with flashlights and a portable lockpick kit that one of them bragged about buying for emergencies. They dressed in black like amateur spies, whispering loudly, tripping over sprinklers, and glancing around as if expecting some cinematic villain to leap out. In truth, they were the villains, but too self-righteous to realize it. Their mission was simple: get into Keanu Reeves' garage and uncover the truth behind the mysterious boxes. The men crept toward the side gate first, but it was locked. They attempted to climb, but one slipped and cursed loudly. Finally, they managed to pry open the gate enough to squeeze through, sending a loud metallic scrape echoing through the night. They froze, listening. Nothing. Slowly, they approached the garage door. One man pulled out the lockpick kit, hands trembling more from excitement than fear. HOA regulations give us the right to investigate potential violations, he whispered nervously. It wasn't true. Not even close. But they repeated it like a mantra to justify what they were about to do. After 2 minutes of fumbling, the lock clicked. The door eased open, just enough to reveal darkness inside. Flashlights flicked on, and then their breath caught. Inside the garage was not a warehouse, not a business, not a weapons storage. It was a workshop. A clean, organized, meticulously built workshop filled with metal frames, supportive mechanisms, custom-fit joints, adjustable seats, and designs taped neatly to the walls. The men stepped inside, shining their lights over the tools and half-assembled machines. What is all this?" one whispered. Another lifted a blueprint and read the words printed across the top. Adaptive mobility wheelchair, lightweight prototype. There were sketches of children, notes about medical conditions, diagrams for safety features. One man swallowed hard. "He's building wheelchairs." Another man's voice trembled. "But why?" He never told anyone, and for a moment, just a moment, guilt flickered in their eyes. But guilt wasn't enough to stop them, because then one of them spotted something else, a stack of sealed boxes labeled with shipping destinations, hospitals, rehabilitation centers, charity groups, and next to those boxes lay receipts, all paid out of Keanu's own pocket. No sponsors, no donors, no publicity. He was doing it alone, quietly, secretly, selflessly. Yet the HOA, blinded by their obsession with rules, couldn't process what they were seeing. Instead of understanding, fear rushed in. Fear that they had gone too far, fear that Keanu would expose them, fear that their reputation would shatter. "Take pictures," the leader ordered with a shaky whisper. "We need proof, before he spins this against us." Their flashlights clicked rapidly, illuminating the prototypes one last time before they turned to leave. But as they reached the door, a light snapped on behind them. A bright, blinding beam from the opposite end of the garage. The men froze, their hearts hammered, and slowly, painfully slowly, Keanu Reeves stepped out from the shadows, arms crossed, eyes cold with disappointment rather than anger. "You broke into my home," he said softly. The softness made it worse. The men stuttered, trying to form excuses, community concern, potential hazards, authorized inspection. Keanu lifted a hand. Silence fell instantly. He walked past them, picked up a small wheelchair prototype, and set it gently on a workbench. Then he turned back to them. "These are for kids," he said quietly. "Kids who can't walk. Kids who are waiting for these." His voice cracked just slightly, enough to make all three men look away in shame. But shame wouldn't fix what they'd done, and Keanu knew the HOA wouldn't stop here. If they were willing to break into his home, they were willing to go much further. He took a deep breath and stepped aside from the door. "Leave," he said calmly, "before you make things worse for yourselves." The men didn't argue. They slipped out into the night like frightened animals, hurrying down the street. Keanu stood alone in the quiet garage, the lights buzzing faintly above him. He looked at the half-finished wheelchairs, the scattered tools, the scattered blueprints, and the locked door the men had forced open. For the first time since the deliveries began, he felt something new mix with his determination, a growing sense of danger. The next morning, Crestwood Heights woke to a storm, not of rain, but of rumors. The three board members who had broken into Keanu's garage didn't sleep. Fear twisted into panic, and panic twisted into self-preservation. By sunrise, they had rewritten the story completely. In their version, Keanu had confronted them aggressively, refused to explain suspicious equipment, and threatened legal action. None of it was true, but truth rarely stands a chance when fear spreads faster. By 9 a.m., Marjorie Cranston had already typed up a neighborhood-wide alert, stamped with the HOA logo like a verdict. Potential safety hazards discovered at the Reeves residence. Residents advised to maintain distance. The HOA printed dozens of bright red flyers and taped one onto every mailbox, fence, and community board. The words were designed to create tension: unauthorized machinery, untested equipment, possible safety violations, unregistered activity. Not once did the flyers mention what Keanu was actually building. That truth was far too inconvenient. Instead, rumors flourished. Some residents whispered that he was assembling dangerous devices. Others suggested he was running an illegal workshop. A few even embellished the story with wild imagination. Engines, chemicals, secret tunnels. The more dramatic the rumor, the more eagerly it spread. By afternoon, the atmosphere around Redwood Lane had changed completely. Curtains stayed half-drawn. Children who once waved at Keanu avoided walking past his house. Neighbors who used to smile and greet him now turned away stiffly, clutching their bags or dogs a little tighter. Keanu noticed all of it. The nervous glances, the sudden quiet conversations that ended whenever he walked by. He didn't confront anyone. He didn't defend himself. He didn't explain. Instead, he continued working in his garage, tightening bolts and assembling components with the same calm focus as before. But every click of the wrench echoed a little louder now. Every sound of the drill seemed to invite suspicion, and every new delivery truck was followed by people filming from across the street. Inside the clubhouse, the HOA held yet another emergency meeting. Marjorie stood at the front like a queen addressing a kingdom in crisis. "This situation threatens the uniform safety standards of our community," she declared, pointing at blurry photos the board members had taken inside Keanu's garage. They were zoomed in, out of context, deliberately confusing. Heavy equipment, exposed wiring, unknown mechanical parts. She was careful to omit the word wheelchair. She also didn't mention the children they were meant for. Instead, she stirred fear like a conductor guiding an orchestra of paranoia. Residents nodded, their faces tight with worry. A few spoke up, asking if maybe Keanu's intentions were good. But Marjorie silenced them with a stern glare. "Intentions don't matter," she said. "Rules matter." Meanwhile, just outside the clubhouse window, young Emily Caldwell stood watching again, her eyes full of frustration. She knew the truth because she had seen the photos more clearly when one board member left his laptop open earlier. She had recognized the wheelchair frames instantly. Her older cousin, a disabled athlete, used one. But she was just a kid, no voice in the HOA, no power to challenge adults drowning in their own self-importance. She ran to Keanu's house after the meeting, wanting to warn him. But when she reached the gate, he was already standing there, quietly taking down a red HOA flyer someone had taped to his door. He looked tired, not physically, but in a way that made her chest tighten. "Mr. Reeves," she said softly. He turned, recognizing her instantly. "They're lying," she whispered. "They're telling everyone you're dangerous. But I know you're helping kids. Why don't you just tell them?" Keanu looked at her with a faint smile, the kind that carried more sadness than comfort. He crouched down so he was eye level with her. "Sometimes," he said gently, "people aren't ready to hear the truth. Not until they need to." Emily didn't fully understand, but she nodded anyway. Then Keanu looked up at the row of watching houses, the staring windows, the suspicious silhouettes behind curtains. Something in his eyes changed, not anger, but resolve. Because tonight, something would happen that would expose the HOA more than they ever expected. And this time, the truth wouldn't stay hidden. The storm rolled in without warning that evening. Dark, violent, and fast. Crestwood Heights hadn't seen anything like it in years. Sirens echoed from a valley below as winds tore through neatly trimmed bushes and rattled the perfect white fences the HOA adored so much. Residents rushed indoors, slamming windows shut, clutching emergency lights, and praying the storm would pass quickly. But in the chaos, one house stood vulnerable, the Caldwell residence. Emily's mother, panicked by the sudden blackout, didn't notice that Emily had gone missing. Only when lightning flashed across the sky did she see the back gate swinging open, rain pounding the yard, and her daughter nowhere in sight. Emily had been outside feeding a stray cat when the wind kicked up. The gate had slammed shut behind her, and a fallen tree branch blocked her path back to the house. Fear tightened her chest. She tried shouting for help, but the storm drowned out her voice. Water soaked her clothes, leaves whipped against her face, and thunder boomed overhead. She stumbled toward the street, her foot catching on broken branches. She fell hard, pain shooting up her leg. Tears mixed with rain. "Mom!" she cried, but no one heard. No one, except one person. From across the street, Keanu Reeves stepped onto his porch, flashlight in hand, scanning the storm-battered road. He spotted a small figure limping near the sidewalk and moved instantly, without hesitation. Keanu reached Emily just as another gust knocked her sideways. He caught her, shielding her with his jacket as debris blew across the street. "You're okay," he said firmly, scooping her into his arms. "I've got you." He carried her toward the nearest shelter, his garage, still lit by emergency backup power. Inside, he placed her gently on a workbench and examined her ankle. "Sprain," he muttered. "Nothing broken." He wrapped her leg with one of the padded support straps he used on wheelchair frames, improvising a brace. Emily sniffled but managed a shaky whisper. "I was scared." "I know," Keanu said softly. "But you're safe now. I promise." As the storm intensified, a loud cracking sound erupted outside. The old maple tree near Emily's driveway snapped in half and crashed into the road, blocking her house completely. Her mother screamed from the porch, unable to reach her daughter. Neighbors emerged in panic, shouting over the wind, pointing across the street. And that was when they saw it. Keanu stepping out of his garage with Emily in his arms, carrying her through the rain despite branches crashing around him. He moved with urgency, determination, and zero concern for his own safety. The HOA board members watched from their windows, stunned. This wasn't a man hiding dangerous equipment. This was a man saving a child. He navigated the flooded street, shielding Emily's head, until he reached her mother. She broke into tears the moment he handed Emily over. "Thank you," she cried. "Thank you so much. I couldn't get to her. I thought." She couldn't finish the sentence. Keanu simply nodded, checking once more that Emily was safe before stepping back. But as he turned to leave, a flash of lightning illuminated something behind him, the interior of his garage, still open from when he rushed out. And this time, the neighbors saw everything clearly. The wheelchairs, the tools, the blueprints, the hospital labels, the charity shipping forms. The truth hung in the air like the crack of thunder that followed. Keanu wasn't a threat. He was a silent hero. A hush fell over the street despite the storm. People looked at each other with shame creeping into their expressions. The lies, the rumors, the surveillance, all of it shattered in a single moment. Even Marjorie, standing at her door with a flashlight, seemed frozen. Her eyes darted from Emily's injured leg to the supportive brace tied around it, made from the same material she had photographed accusingly just days earlier. For the first time, her certainty faltered. Before anyone could speak, Keanu closed his garage door slowly and quietly returned inside, soaked but calm. He didn't want applause. He didn't want recognition. He wanted to finish the wheelchairs. But Crestwood Heights had finally seen the truth, and the HOA's lies were about to collapse under the weight of their own storm.